I'm going to say this with as much love or malice as it requires. If you find yourself recently talking about the surveillance state, governmental overreach, your invasion of privacy, and thought crimes specifically, I need you to interrogate how you date. I need you to interrogate what you think of child rearing, because they did not manufacture that consent with the government alone. They actually manufactured most of that consent socioculturally, with the way kids are raised and the way you partner, especially since the advent of social media. If you cannot see the connection between the government wanting databases about all of their citizens, flying drones over neighborhoods, because if you're not doing crimes, why do you care? If you can't see the connection between the government wanting your face and making you do all kinds of biometrics to get onto a plane, to travel in and outside of the country, or domestically even, if you can't see the connection between this type of behavior and like Life 360, child leashes, going through your kids' diaries, right? Making them undress in front of you, make sure they don't have piercings or tattoos, taking the door off their room as punishment. If you cannot see the connection between what the government is doing and the police are doing with surveillance, and you requiring location sharing as security, respect, a boundary. If you can't see that, but you're making, finstas to stalk your partner on the low, to test them, to make sure that they're not straying, I don't think you understand these things. Y'all are talking about thought crimes, and all of a month ago, you hopped on here and started a trend about micro cheating, which included liking stories, swiping up on stories. People said watching porn because it shows you're attracted to other people. People said being attracted to other people after you're in a relationship is cheating, and you don't see the through line. That if you're doing nothing wrong, what do you have to hide? If you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care that I'm going through your shit? If you're not cheating on me, why do you care that I'm going through your phone? If you're being a good kid, why do you care that I read your diary? If you do not see the through line to this behavior, you don't understand it. And I'm kind of tired of hearing people complain about it, thinking it exists in a vacuum with their government, when they bolster it all the fucking time in the culture, and then treat us who are like, hey, this is very copy, this is very surveillance state, like we're bugging. Like we're here to just like work some seedy underground for the deplorables in the dating market. As if this shit isn't connected. A lot of you need to self-reflect. I tell people all the time, it's always fuck capitalists till it's time to own your partner or kids. And it's always fuck cops unless it's time to use the same tools they surveil us with to surveil your partner. Now there's all the fucking nuance in the world. There's all the fucking gray area in the world. And y'all need to interrogate that. We did not get here by accident. And we damn sure didn't get here like overnight. You are engaged in the world, in the metric, in the framework that allows for this shit to happen. And, spoiler alert, maybe bad news even, if we continue that behavior in the culture, it has no pathway to leave the way we govern. It doesn't seem hard for me to understand, but it is for a lot of people. And I think it's time to reflect, because it's all cute when you make the skits about like, oh, the Palantir installed brain chip called anti-capitalist thoughts and kaboom. But then if you just swapped out a couple of words, this is how y'all sound about relationships. Like my girlfriend, the chip that's installed that my girlfriend can read the brain activity on, saw that I was attracted to a woman while we were walking past her on the street. Now I'm a cheater and she broke up with me. It is not. It's very much the same behavior. And y'all acting like it's not is part of the reason we're here. So I read this Rolling Stone article, how cringe screenshots killed dating apps. And oddly enough, it made me think of McCarthyism and the Red Scare of the 50s. Stick with me till the end. It'll make sense. Probably. Hopefully. We'll see. The part I want to highlight in the article is this. In other words, many are using it to mediate their experience for a vast audience. Enacting the overdetermined drama of it would deserve to be brushed off as a meaningless misconnection, must be perceived by others, and most crucially, you must derive status value from it. The discretion it takes to keep stuff like this to yourself is draining out of the culture. And that automatically made me think of the 50s and McCarthyism and this idea of the Red Scare. I had briefly touched on it in my Substack when I had wrote There Was Only Turf last year on reanimating feminine terror as triumph, where I discussed that in the 50s, by 1954, half the population was being prescribed amphetamines, sedatives, and barbiturates in like slew of places. We are talking about women having medication 2-to-1 for compared to their male counterparts. And that is the sign of a discontent populace, one where everyone wants to be everywhere but where they are. And when we look at what we are seeing with ourselves now, what has been studied in the last 20 years, how every few years the younger generation becomes lonelier and lonelier. Some say they are twice as lonely. Some studies say they are twice as lonely as people over age 70, it really illuminates where the hyper-surveilled state in capitalism thrives, which is a place where lonely populations need an activity that make them feel like there is value in their presence, and surveilling each other is one of them. I don't think people think of dating a lot when they consider hypersurveillance and capitalism, but that's kind of the point of this article. The fact that endeavors that would be previously private are being made public for the hopes of social currency, which was the same thing happening with McCarthyism. There was a certain level of responsibility imbued into the general American populace, especially those with suburban life, that they could prevent communism, the Red Scare, from taking place in their neighborhoods. That would give people who felt largely discontent purpose. And this idea that your purpose is related to a greater good is something we are seeing in these kind of dating cringe screenshots, where people think they are saving other people from this potential horrible person, when oftentimes they just aren't compatible with this person, or maybe they're the villain in the story. But the point is, the surveillance and vigilantism attached with being able to prove who is right in a situation, who is moral in a situation, is not new, but it is one that is actively anamorphizing with technology in front of us and giving the government and other large structures like capitalism a huge breath to surveil all of us, because we have manufactured that consent with our own activity. And that's something I want people to keep in mind the next time someone answers one of their Hinge prompts weirdly and they want to broadcast it with hopes of blowing up on TikTok and eventually having an income,